Günter, you have now the choice. You can live, you can still live that other life because you still can choose,
Sure.
but you also have an option now to go into a different life. One which maybe shows you different and other obstacles or barriers or bumps on the road, and you can now choose. Before you had no choice. So
That's right.
that's the difference. And I fully
And you would have
appreciate what you're
awareness on
saying.
either one that you did. Nothing wrong with being a partner in PwC, but you would have awareness and awareness of yourself and awareness of what's going on around you and how it fits together. I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition, a podcast about making the most of the changes we're given. As a married father of 3 teenagers, a longtime global business executive and adventurer, I've been through hundreds of transitions in my life. Many have been difficult, but all have led to a depth and richness I could never have imagined. You'll get to hear all about them on this podcast so that together we can create more love and joy in our lives, no matter what transitions we are going through. So, welcome back to another episode of Life in Transition. I am so excited today to have Günter Westphal with us and joining us today. He is a former partner at PwC in Europe and has made a really brave or courageous transformation and transition to facilitator, leadership coach, and gestalt therapist, co-founding and running Moving Mountains. I'm really inspired by the transition, Günter, but I also am really inspired by the important role that you played in my own transition. And I really look forward to talking with you about that today. So, Günter, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Art. I'm really, really excited and happy to be back in your space, and now in a totally different one than the first time when we met. So
yeah, that's
happy
pretty
to be
amazing.
here.
Say a little bit more about that, because we'll fill in a little bit of the backstory, but let's say a little bit more about that. So my space, you see me very differently than you saw me when we first met in the fall of 2020. Right. This was almost just over 3 years ago. It was November of 2020, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, I got a call from my good dear friend Lynn Skotnitsky, who asked if I would be a co-facilitator for a person she's been asked to do some support in helping him to get over to maybe find answers, and that happened to be you. So I'm very, very happy that I accepted then, because we, over the time of the course we did together, or the work we did together, I got to know a very special person, and I'm really, really happy to be in your space again and see you in a slightly different space. You call this Life in Transition, and here you are, and here I am. So very happy to share what has brought my life on this track, and why am I now in a totally different space than myself 7 years ago, or 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I almost wish we had recorded when we first hit the button to welcome into Zoom, because it was so much energy and so much excitement just to see each other and connect and to see how you observed me, a little bit differently than, as you said, than the space I was in 3 years ago. And in the work that you facilitated for me, I still have this GPS, this general purpose statement that you and Lynn developed together with me and my wife. And this really, I felt pretty lucky. It was during COVID. We get to have a private session basically with you two on Zoom, not the bigger groups that you usually facilitate. But I have it right here, and I would love to read it if that's okay with you.
I think it's courageous on your part, and it's absolutely okay with me. I'd love to step into that.
So I have it on the glass right here
Yeah.
under my desk. I had it on my mirror in my bathroom for a long time, and I don't read it every day anymore like I used to, but I still carry it in my wallet, and I still have it here under my glass. And this is the general purpose statement, or GPS, the direction, the compass that Günter and Lynn and the process they were leading me on helped me find. And this is how it goes: loving husband and dad, fit and playful adventurer, and mover of mountains. I am a disciple of life and a distiller of pragmatic wisdom. Since then, I've added distiller and sharer of pragmatic wisdom. As I listen to my body, dial down the opinion of others, and set healthy boundaries, I lead a life that is full, yet underscheduled. And I brazenly unleash my creativity in the world. In the spaciousness of existence, I breathe deeply, and I enjoy what is fully trusting that we are all okay. I am at peace. Relaxing into the deep knowing that our birthright is to shine our own light. I inspire us all to co-author new chapters where we all learn to love, play, teach, and give hope. I am present and I am enough. From here, I serve the moment and God above. So I haven't read that in a while, Günter, and I just want to say thank you to you and Lynn for helping that come out of me. And I see so many ways where I'm living that today, and how I know you guys were working on evolving your GPSs even at that point, how I would evolve it a little bit today. But it's pretty amazing to think about, the boundaries that I set and the changes that I've made, and the creativity that I'm putting out there in the world, and living into what I feel like each moment's calling me to do now. It's pretty cool. So thank you.
It touches me actually to hear it again now after 3 years. I do recall actually now the energy in which we all were together, and Lynn and I have crafted this, but only because we were so close together. So thank you very much for bringing me into that room again 3 years ago, and I'm now fully on in this podcast. That really makes it very special, and from your side a very courageous beginning to start a podcast with your GPS.
Thank you, and thank you for helping me get there. It's amazing. Like when I actually think about the space I was in, it was still I was right in the depths of my struggle for whether I should stay or whether I should go from the corporate world. I mean, in the deep throes of it, working on becoming nobody, but not knowing who I was on the other side of being nobody, and wanting to change, but being really afraid to change. And that was 1 year before I actually left my corporate position.
And the source of something totally new.
Yeah. And now we're at the genesis, and a little bit past the genesis of a completely new space. So I really thank you for that. And thank you for the role that you played there, and how generous you were with yourself and your energy and your learnings during that process. And I've had, I know a lot in this course that you guys were facilitating for us is a lot about what I call courageous conversations. I think you guys call them tiger conversations. But I've had many of those since then, many of those, with my boss, with my parents, with my wife, with my kids, with myself. And it's such a better way to live, to face the tiger, as you guys said, to face our problems and to see things eye to eye, not better than or worse than, but just eye to eye, and to address them. So really, really appreciate that. And the other thing that I really appreciate, and it's still so relevant, like right exactly today, is to be curious about others instead of being critical, others that I'm challenged with. And I feel like I need to have one of those courageous conversations with, but to stay loving and curious instead of critical, which was a really big thing I also got from that training. And it's still relevant, like right now, today, in some of my key relationships, to remember that and to keep my heart open when it wants too close. So yeah, thank you.
Well, right now I'm thanking you again for both being not only a great participant in this leadership development course, or personal development course, probably what's a bit more appropriate, but also the way how you've brought this to life, into your life, and therefore into many other people's lives, because these courageous conversations or tiger conversations are the ones which support both sides.
Right.
I'm pretty sure your boss finally had a great conversation with you, even if from your side it was a tiger, and maybe it was from his side also a tiger conversation, or a courageous one, and you made it possible. So
yeah,
good on you.
We worked really well together and found a very good result for the company and for the shareholders and so forth. So, and for myself.
And as regards your GPS, which I really, really now stepped into again as you read it, and I felt the energy it carries still for you. I might share during our podcast, maybe mine, if there is the right and a good moment for that.
Absolutely. So
remember
that was
maybe.
that would be great, and I think it will come to that, because I would love to hear that again as well. And I want to start. That's sort of an intro that most people don't get because of this the important history that you and I have together. And again, I'm really grateful for the excuse of the podcast getting together to connect again. Right? It's a really great
That's
excuse to connect with you
absolutely
in
a
a
good
personal way, in
excuse.
an authentic way. But I want to ask you then the question I normally start out the conversation with, and maybe it was the one I alluded to in the introduction, but maybe it was something else. What is one of the most important, most impactful, most meaningful, most difficult, you can put the adjective, transitions that you have made in your life that you would like to share with our listeners and what you've learned from that?
If I give it a relatively brutal and direct description, it would be from being an unaware consultant, running on my treadmill and basically doing business as usual, or making money relatively unaware of the consequences it had for others, for myself, and basically for the greater scheme. So that was the
So making a transition from that to
getting to know myself, starting to look into myself rather than projecting it onto others. So when something wasn't, I mean, to give you a simple example, when something wasn't going well in my life, whether it's a client conversation or a conversation with one of my peers or a conversation with one of my family members, I always found a reason for them to be wrong in that conversation and never ever checked in with myself. So it was a very safe space in which I was, because every time it was somebody else, I didn't have to do anything with
so when we were talking about that eye to eye, you were a little bit higher eye.
I was exactly my eye was higher, and I recalibrated it to become on
so what
an
was
eye level.
What was the key for you to start to get to know yourself? Because I almost think everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah.
If you don't do that. So how did you trip on that? How did you find that? What led you to that? And what process did you what was the first steps down that path to get to know yourself?
That's a very personal question, Art, and I appreciate it.
And you're willing to share or not share. There's no, like I said, it's up to you.
I'm willing to share, because I think it's maybe something which others also are facing. So my private relationship with my wife has actually come to a space where it was very difficult to go any further. And because of both our will to stick together at the time, we knew if we do the same thing again and again and again, we will be actually getting more and more and more frustrated with each other. And so only because of that, I started to go into, basically I did a course called the Hoffman process. I don't want to do
I'm
an
just about to sign up for that. I'm just about to sign up for that.
All right, interesting. So be prepared for some deep dive into stuff which is really,
my brother
really...
did that, and then another close old friend of mine. And anytime I say two people tell me something, then I should listen, right? Maybe God trying to speak.
Yeah, so it's a very deep process, and with that, everything got into, basically started rolling, and my internal aha moments were into the hundreds on those 8 days, which the Hoffman process lasts. And then I said, oops, that was 55 years of my life, or 53 years or whatever it was, 7 years ago now. So it must have been when I was 53. Everything what I thought I knew was challenged by my new understanding of myself and how I lived my life. So yeah.
What a gift, though, Günter. I mean, difficult
Yes,
for sure.
By now I also understand it like that.
But what a gift as well, because most people maybe don't ever have the chance.
Yes.
Until they're on their deathbed, when they realize everything they knew the previous 69 or 99 years wasn't really the way it was.
spoke to a therapist in those years as well, and
Yeah,
he actually said exactly the same. He said, Günther, you have now the choice. You can live, you can still live that other life because you still can choose,
sure.
but you also have an option now to go into a different life, one which maybe shows you different and other obstacles or barriers or bumps on the road, and you can now choose. Before you had no choice. So
That's right.
that's the difference, and I fully
And you would have
appreciate what you're
awareness on
saying.
either one that you did. Nothing wrong with being a partner in PwC, but you would have awareness, and awareness of yourself and awareness of what's going
Absolutely.
on around you and how it fits together. Oh,
Absolutely.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I remember my first silent retreat, which I did right before our time together.
Mm.
I had a huge realization about how I was seeing, and this is, and I think it's in episode 6, but how I was seeing my
Mm.
family as pieces of the puzzle of my life. Like, not
Mm.
really, I mean, it sounds awful, not really like human beings, but like
Mm.
tangents to my life,
Mm.
right? Things that,
Mm.
like, I want my life to be a certain way, and therefore my family needs to be a
Mm.
certain way to fit my picture of my ideal life. Was heart-wrenching,
Absolutely.
heartbreaking to
Which
see that.
is very similar to what I wanted to be my wife. Actually, she needed to fit into what I thought is a good and real and the appropriate life, and it's
Right. Of
wasn't
your design, not thinking of them as a
my
human being
design.
with their own design and their own interior awareness and their own things they need. So I had not spoken for 4 or 5 days, 4 days, I think.
Mm.
And I went and talked to the abbot because I was just distraught. And it was interesting what he said.
Mm.
He said, "Thank God for having this awareness now. You're the third man I've had this conversation with in my life. 2 were on their deathbed. So now you can go back and do something about it."
About it. Absolutely. So that's exactly how I feel, and what was actually moving when I understood this, looking at it from that perspective. Since that moment, I never called my marriage actually as a failure,
Mm-hmm.
although we are separated. I
Right.
actually I couldn't call it a failure anymore. Yes, under traditional way of looking at things and relationships, it's probably a failure. But I don't have that traditional way of looking at it. I have it
Right.
my personal ways. We both developed a lot, and we are now very close, good friends.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
we've had, yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's to come to that awareness and to realize that it starts inside of ourselves in this inner awareness. I have a lot of people ask me, how should I solve this problem out there? And I say, I don't know about that problem out there, but I know I can't solve any problems in my life without starting on my inner work. Right. And so that's really great. So that was how you got started on this journey. Um, what what have what have you learned so far? Like, tell us a little bit about what your life is like today. I think most people can imagine what it's like to be a partner in PwC or McKinsey or EY, these big consulting companies. What is your life like a little bit today, and how did what you learned from realizing that started with, I'm not, and so sorry if I'm putting the wrong words in your mouth, but I'm not behaving right in my marriage. I'm not having the right heart in my marriage. And that started a shift. And at the time, you were, as you described yourself, this unaware partner, successful in the eyes of the world, like really successful, and unaware sort of the how it fit in the bigger picture, going through life like most people do. Nothing wrong with that. A few people are lucky enough to have a wake-up call. So the way you were in your relationship was a little bit of a wake-up call, and doing the
It
Hoffman
was
process was the
absolutely.
spark. Tell us a little bit about how your life looks today differently than that, and where, how you what was the path you traversed to get there.
So there were 2 steps actually to get here. The first step was I wasn't immediately going from the Hoffman process. I'm the wrong place and I need to leave, and that was it was a process. So the second part, which I did, was 6 months, 4 months later, 5 months later, after the Hoffman process, I went through another process you now also have experienced, called the LDI, the Leadership Development Intensive, with the founder John Scherer. And that was another wake-up call. So the Hoffman process, in a way, cleaned up my past, or gave me a little bit more awareness about where I'm coming from and what my behaviors basically I've always externalized and projected onto others how much I needed to start with myself. And the second thing was the leadership development process, which I did then, allowed me to have a much more clearer picture about my future. So after that second process, the LDI, I went back to actually then still PwC, and I was clear I wanted to do this type of work within an organization like PwC, ideally PwC, because a consulting organization of that size and of that type is in high need. I think there is,
Yes. So it has a lot of
at
power.
least
It has a lot of
there's
bandwidth,
a
right?
lot of power, exactly. And because of the fast and the way how things are organized that were there, it's a very fast and a very intense life there. So not much time to look inside, but rather to get stuff done outside. And
Right. Right.
that was for me I wanted to start doing stuff from the inside, that the outside becomes either more easier, more authentic, or cleaner, or that actually people have a more joyful and satisfying life,
Yeah. So more
both inside and
fulfilling, more
outside.
rich,
Yes.
more
Yeah. And of
deep.
course, it sounds like it's like the buzzwords of fulfilling, deep, and rich, but it is actually exactly how I feel my life right now is. And because I wasn't invited to do this from the inside of an organization, of in this case PwC, I decided to leave, and that was a brave decision. Actually, I mean, I'm now saying it was a brave. It was actually for me, it was a natural decision. But many people within the organization call it, "Wow, you leave a lot of money on the table," and there was no need for me to. I could have started my new life also 2, 3, 4 years later, but that would have
Right.
been 2, 3, 4 years being inauthentic, because it didn't feel right anymore. Before it felt right, I wasn't
Right.
in pain being in this organization apart. I was actually, it was what it was.
Good life. Yeah.
So
So
a good life. Best
talk a
thing.
little bit about that word, because it's not the first time you brought it up. But what does that mean to you? So you said I chose to do this, even though I'm leaving a lot of money on the table, et cetera, because I didn't want to live my life being inauthentic. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be inauthentic? Authentic. What does it mean to you?
So the point which I started to think about to get the more clearer vision was when I learned the sentence from John Scherer on this LDI book, which says, as a leader, you don't have to change yourself. You have to come home to yourself. That changes everything. So authentic means
Mm-hmm.
coming from a more authentic place inside. So being more at home,
So
at
once you
peace.
recognize your GPS, once you recognize what means to be home for you, to choose to stay separate from that for 2 or 3 or 4 more years seemed completely not
Exactly.
right to you,
Could seem completely a waste of life, a waste
right?
of
Yeah.
time, because before my success factors were very limited to getting recognition within the organization and within society. Here we go. That's I got a lot, and get money.
Yeah.
So is as part of the recognition. Here we go. So those two things were, and now my being successful has a lot less to do with that and that. It's still part of it, but it's
Sure.
not the sheer, like, not the whole reason and the only reason for doing
Right.
it.
Right. So what was the GPS then? We mentioned this a little bit ago, but are you okay to then read your GPS that you came to at that time? Because that is, at that point, at least, is the definition of your authentic self, from what I know from that process. I know it is for me. So what was
Yeah,
that? What is that for you? If you don't mind to share that with us,
it
that would be
is.
great.
No, it's very special still for me, and it has a lot of what I call juice. So basically, it still carries a lot of energy. So I need to just get me into this space. My GPS, my greater purpose statements, is the following: safe, protected, and deeply loved. I acknowledge humanity in both of us and use my gentle power and passion to shake us awake. Letting my inner light shine, I'm a charismatic changer of systems, transforming lives and healing the wounds of the worlds. So I love myself, an extraordinary seeker, calling you to profound and transformational spaces. Accomplished, competitive, sexy, sweet, and so much more. My true worth is in my human flawed messiness. So I just relax. Showing you my pain and longings and inviting you to kiss my scars and wounds. I awaken in your arms, at home and at peace. And we rise to discover that we are one, and together we channel the light and consciousness that I have always sensed. That's it.
Mm. So you know what comes up for me when I hear that. I mean, so I see why you need to get centered to read that. So deep, so meaningful. And it's what comes up for me when you read that is the you and me that I'm talking to is both me. It's different parts of me.
You got the sense. You
That's what it
got
comes.
the
I mean, of
essence.
course, it's others also, but it starts with, loving myself and
Mm.
acknowledging my scars and loving
Mm.
those even, and not feeling that I'm not worthy or I should be ashamed because of my scars and my broken pieces.
Yeah.
Ooh. And then from that, if we can love that, then we can love the world and therefore make an impact on the world.
Yes. Yes,
Mm.
Art. I can see that you've gone some some kilometers on your track, on your path. To have that conversation right now is really joyful.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit exposes me, I feel, but it's
Mm-hmm.
joyful. It's
Yeah.
really joyful.
Yeah. It's vulnerable. It's
Thank you.
authentic. It's real. It's scary. It's sad. It's joyful. It's all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And is that how much have you altered it from your first? You said it was 7 years ago when you first did?
Yes, it's been exactly like you. I've been on my road, on my personal road, and it became it became who I was.
Mm.
So I actually so it became it got a huge shift or an extraordinary shift this year in January, February. So it's been, yeah, online basically and in my heart since 9 months now.
Okay.
So in that form, and
Right.
I'm still adjusting small
Sure.
pieces. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
It's great that it's still evolving and still so real to you, and you're making it a
yeah,
beacon in your life as well.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, it's really beautiful to have that beacon or have that ember that you can follow, right?
yeah.
And really make a difference. And I love, when I see pictures of you that you put on LinkedIn with you and the teams where you're leading people through this extraordinary work in the mountains somewhere, whether it's whatever continent it's on, and there's this beautiful settings, and then I see the light coming out of the eyes of you and your colleagues, and also the participants that you're facilitating for. Yeah, it's really always makes me smile. And it's not just because of the connection I personally have to doing the process. Unfortunately, mine was over Zoom, but also because of the light that I see coming out of the eyes of the people that are doing doing this work together. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Wow. So this is
Thank
your
you, Art.
greater purpose statement that pulls you along, that shows you who you are and who you are becoming
Yes,
all at the same time.
absolutely. And you hear almost anything what I'm doing now is part of that greater purpose statement. So when I say I'm calling you to profound and transformational spaces, that's exactly what I'm doing in any type of team development work or leadership development or personal development work or actually in a way also coaching, like a one-on-one. And of course, the Gestalt therapies, the training become a Gestalt therapist helps a lot, because it helped me to connect first to myself, but also now easier. Like when we actually started our call, and I was just curious to look at you and sense in how you are, and that's what I'm also doing in any normal day's work now, and
Right.
whatever I'm doing.
So there's a lot more presence
Yeah,
in that.
you just named probably, if you have asked me the question, I'm now giving the answer to a question you didn't ask. It is, what's the largest, the biggest percentage of ingredient in all of what I'm doing differently now? It's my percentage of presence.
Mm. Mm.
It has risen from, I don't know where it was before, to something much bigger. So you're right. Presence is an ingredient which is alchemistic to any relationship and to any type of work. And
Yeah.
so I'm bringing a lot more
And I
presence.
think that's something that I know for me, um, that presence also is to any kind of work. Even if I had stayed in the corporate world, or even if you had stayed in the partnership, that presence is also very valuable in those places. So I engaged in a major consulting contract after I left my company,
Mm-hmm.
but I did it differently. Same space, a lot of the same people, but I did it differently. I really put my ego aside, and I was present, and I didn't uber prepare. I just showed up and was present, and
Mm.
really worked on
Not
listening
over
more than I
preparing.
talk,
Mm-hmm.
and just being present and trusting my judgment of the in the presence. And I think I also added tremendous value in a traditional business setting
Mm-hmm.
without taking up space,
Mm-hmm.
without being stressed, without
Mm-hmm.
being dramatic, without being
Mm.
concerned for my ego.
Wow.
So it was really a gift to be able to practice in a familiar space that could be a triggering space to my
Mm.
workaholism and egotism and other things, and to, for the most part, not lean into that, and to see that, um, you know, presence is really a very powerful, even in a standard business setting. So for all of you listening that are not thinking about some crazy radical transition like Günter and I have made, the crazy and radical part actually isn't in changing careers. Actually, Günter, when I reflect on what you and I have done, it's the internal work. And that's just as relevant, running a multinational corporation as it is running a family or being a therapist.
You're actually so right with what you're saying. I mean, it's my view that doing that type of work, which I'm doing now, and seeing people staying where they are, but changing the way how they are doing whatever that work is, whether it's a consulting work or a accounting work or an IT work, it doesn't matter. If there is the ingredient is changed, that whole quality shifts to something else. So in fact, I did change after I've gone through this LDI, and you did, but you were already somehow not sure if this is the right place for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm, more than 95% of the people I'm actually working with now do not change their careers because of that. But some of them, on that's different for individuals, shift some behaviors, shift some way of looking at things, shift their intentions. And that is actually where we are starting point. And then we see where life is taking them. And with some of them, I'm still in contact after 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And they're very, very, very grateful for the impulse they were given, they got a couple of years ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. So,
Yeah, no, I
so
think
I'm
I think it's I had this, I write a weekly blog, and the one I didn't do on Friday that I will still do today, but it's about what's come to me as a title is there's no right action from wrong intention.
Ah, cool.
right? It's impossible to have right action with my heart closed, because the intention, the way that I'm holding it when I do something, makes it not right, by itself. And I think that's what you're talking about, that there's no, and on the flip side of that, there's no wrong career, there's no wrong contribution if your heart space, if you're bringing presence, if you're coming home, as John Scherer says, if you're coming home to who you really are, that's
Exactly.
useful at home, it's useful in a caring profession, it's useful running a business, and whatever it is.
So on my LinkedIn profile, actually, I also have as like maybe the first or second line, I don't even remember right now, is like leading from the heart, because that was the biggest step change I did. I was leading from the head before. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't bad. I was
Right.
clever, intelligent, smart. I found solutions. I did the work, but I was excluding hearts from
Mm.
my equation. And now I'm leading from the heart, and I see, the head is actually still a really meaningful and a useful thing
Absolutely.
to put into the equation, but it's not the leading part anymore. It's the following. So the heart is giving my intentions, and the head is sort of a good executor.
Yeah, doing the calculations, doing the planning, and you need all those things. You need to be able to see if the numbers are
Absolutely.
different, or if somebody's in a suffering place or whatever. But it's the right action because it's coming from the right place.
From the right
Right.
space in the right place.
And
Yep.
yeah, no, that's really cool. Really cool. Um, Looking back on this big transition now, is there anything that you would have done differently? Is there anything, if you could go back to your 50-year-old or 53-year-old self and give any whisper, little nudge one way or the other?
Yeah. Um, First of all, I would congratulate myself
I
to
love that.
be courageous, to go into this not knowing space, the space of, I had no idea what the Hoffman process would bring. Actually, in fact, I didn't do a research what the Hoffman process was all about. I think you know already now much, much more than I ever knew when I first started. I did not know what the LDI was all about. I did not know. So I did. And for the Hoffman process, it was, I had no idea why I was doing it. I was just feeling drawn to it. And the LDI I did on purpose. I did say, okay, if something is coming up out of that, let me really feel it from, without being in an expectation mode. So I
Mm.
went there not expecting anything, and it was blowing my mind. It was outperforming all my non-existing expectations, basically. And so that's something which I would congratulate myself to.
And how much of that outperforming your non-existing expectations do you think was because you came in without any expectations?
A lot, because without expectations, I did not have to actually compare always. Oh, that's too long, or that's too short. It was fireworks basically.
So you're
Whatever
just willing to
happened,
be open, and then everything
yes,
can come or go, and no
yeah,
judgment.
yeah, that's right. So a second thing I might say to myself is, um, there will be tough times coming. Trust the process. So, because I wasn't always trusting the process, and there were tough times. So I would give myself assurance that it will be all fine.
Tell us a little bit more about that. So, I mean, what does it mean to trust the process?
Um, the Hoffman process, as it's called, only started the whole thing. It didn't finish it. It's work in progress, actually, everything. So that progress was partly very painful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of pain, and sometimes, yeah, um, despair. So I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
didn't
Mm-hmm.
know, is this the right thing to do? I was obviously, um, not getting the recognition which I got in
From
before
performance at work.
from performance at work, exactly, because I first needed to find the real good space. And then don't forget, Corona came almost instantly. So I left officially in September 2019. In March 2020, so 6 months later, the whole thing collapsed, which made also all of our business plans. By that time, I had already founded, together with 5 other friends, Moving Mountains, and all of our ideas and plans and stuff doing development in nature and in movement collapsed because there was nobody with us to go out, because we were not even allowed to stay in a hut, to be together with more than one person. And with that one person, we could only be walking and not sitting, and not, it was a weird time, as you know. So I also had to recalibrate the expectations of what it is we're going to do, and how can we actually become impactful. What is the thing we are now doing when we're not meeting physically people? How can I have an impact in the sense and in the way I wanted, or my heart wanted to have the impact? So all of that was a trusting the process type of recommendation.
So
Now, which I
trusting the
would give.
process is like not pulling back when it gets difficult. If you're coming home to yourself and it's getting painful, it's getting sad, the dark water's coming over you, to be willing to let it come over you, to be willing to keep going, to keep taking the steps along that path of coming home to yourself, even if it doesn't feel perfect or it doesn't look exactly like you thought it was going to look in the minute. If you have the confidence that you're coming home to yourself, to keep going, to follow that process.
That's yes. And to allow myself to feel that thing as well. So I would have been a person very easily to find bypasses. So the process is the process. I would have not stopped Corona from coming, because, but I would have like numbed myself
Yes.
out of the experience. So that would have
Yes.
been the bypass. And until it's then over, and then I would have come out not having had the experience.
Right. So
that's what I meant.
What are some of the ways that you would numb yourself? How are some of the ways that you would avoid the feeling of going into the dark water?
So the first thing would have been more work.
Great.
Just put 5 hours of more work per day into the day.
And if you guys can't see, if you're not watching on video, I keep raising my hand because I'm resonating with what Günter is saying. That's just a signal of, yeah, me too. So first is more work. What else?
So more work. I would have tried to create reasons for staying online, and online is doing some readings of newspapers or economical information, which I then would have told myself I needed for specific whatever clients
It
or
made busy
situations.
research because it's keeping you distracted.
Exactly, keeping basically distraction coming from all different angles. From just thinking, probably at that time, I can't remember when I started to actually be a subscriber of Netflix, but I can easily see me also being on one of those. They are really brilliant, partly, actually, I have to say, and some of the documentary I love. But I would have certainly engaged myself more just to be distracted, and then
Right.
that would have been an easy way out. Yeah, this type of thing I would have
Yeah,
done.
no, I think that's something we all can relate to. So my next question is then, why and how did you start to choose to feel instead of be distracted? Because I think that's where I know that's where I struggle, and I know that's where probably a lot of people struggle. It's like that we feel powerless to overcome our desire for distraction or addiction, if you want to make it a stronger word, right?
Absolutely.
So how did
and
you?
you're right. Addiction is the right word, actually. Here.
How did you make that shift? How did you? What did you notice? What did you see? How did you start to? When you started to choose to do something different? How did that come about?
It's a crook question, and this is when I started this gestalt therapy training. So that was, I had an acquaintance, and he said he did this, and it helped him to become more clear about his own world. And I said, well, it's certainly nothing wrong in doing it. So I wasn't sure at the time when I decided to go for it how deep an impact it will have on me. But from the first session we came together, this is all about sensing, feeling, becoming aware of what's going on. So I got professional trained in sensing and feeling what's going on in me. And then I understood more and more how important it is to be aware of those things. And then only I can be relating to the sensations of others, because then I can actually make sure, this is not me, that's them, or that's not them, that's actually me. So that's how projection very often works, and I'm much better now.
That's such a powerful, I mean, everything else in there, I mean, yeah, but that distinction, to be able to see clearly, not with ego, not with judgment, not with criticism, but be able to see clearly what is me and what is them.
What is me?
I've never, it's never clicked in my head yet before like that, because, but it's so powerful, you know, like another sticker I have under my desk right here is, it's not about me. Because I would take things so personally, and I would, you know, but especially if it was people of power over me or people that are in close relationships to me, which I guess is another way of, in a sense, having power over me. In a way, they're important to me.
Oh, and that immediately brings me to the sentence that if then there's power, money, relationship involved, then it all relates to what's my story with power, money, or relationship. How do I relate to that thing? Where does it come from? And then why is it that I can never raise my voice when there's a person in the hierarchy above me, or why do I always, I'm really nasty to the people below me? Why can I not even give them a friendly, whatever it might be, a good morning or a well done, or I'm really appreciating the way how you work? At the end, I only found out a lot about this through this Gestalt therapy training.
Yeah, so that's a whole nother.
It's a
whole nother
dimension.
like, like how am I triggered, or how am I in those situations? But I was just thinking, like, I had a tough communication, one-way communication yesterday in a relationship that's important to me. And my first reaction was, you know, first I noticed immediately, which at least I noticed again, that my heart starts vibrating at a very high pace. And then immediately I sort of went into the lower, you know, there's something wrong with me. And then I said, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to keep my heart open. Whatever comes up, I'm going to let it move through me. I'm not going to block it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to let it move through instead of trying to avoid it, not going to distraction as a first step, which I did. And then, of course, I talked to my wife about it, and I had a lot of reflection, even during the night last night. And then I realized this morning, it's not about me. It's not about me. This one is not about me. And some of them are. This one's not. And there's still things I can learn, and I'll look at that openly. And my choice is whether I want to keep my heart open toward this relationship or not, regardless of what words came in this